Whispers of the past.
What?
The coffee scalded my tongue as I jerked upright, knocking over my cup and spilling the contents everywhere, but I wasn't paying attention. Because there, across Main Street, was the ghost I'd spent 10 years trying to forget. Alex Garcia, my ex-best friend, my first love. The boy who first stole my heart and then disappeared without so much as a goodbye text. He wasn't a boy anymore. The man crossing the street toward me moved like someone who'd learned to watch his back, his dark eyes scanning the crowd in a way that made my instincts buzz. His shoulders were broader, his jaw sharper, but I'd know that face anywhere. I traced it with my fingers too many times to forget. What the hell is he doing here, I thought. A decade of unanswered texts and sleepless nights, and here he was, barely 20 feet away. His eyes met mine across the street, and time seemed to freeze. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Alex, the one who'd held my hand during summer thunderstorms and promised we'd always have each other's backs. Then his expression shifted, guarded, as he crossed the street toward me. Tyler. His voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher. Wow, I stood, forcing a casual tone. 10 years of radio silence, and that's all you've got. Tyler. He stuffed his hands in his jacket pockets, a familiar nervous gesture that made my chest ache. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I didn't. The words came out sharp. But here you are anyway. Yeah, he glanced over his shoulder, a quick movement I might have missed if I hadn't been watching him so closely. Here I am. Something about that look set off warning bells. The Alex I knew had never been jumpy. Well, why are you here? He met my eyes again, and the intensity of his gaze knocked the breath from my lungs. Because I couldn't stay away. Not anymore. Don't. I took a step back. You lost the right to say things like that when you disappeared without a word. I cut myself off, the old pain rising in my throat. We were everything, he finished softly. I know. And I know I broke that. Broke us. A couple walked past, forcing us closer together. I caught his scent. Leather and something spicy. And memories flooded back. Stolen kisses in his truck. Whispered promises under starlit skies. The way he'd look at me like I was his whole world. Until he wasn't there anymore. We should talk inside, he said. No! I planted my feet. You don't get to show up here and start making demands. Not after. Please! He cut me off, voice slow and urgent. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. Buy me a coffee, I huffed. You owe me that much after making me spill this one. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Just coffee? For now. I headed inside, not waiting to see if he'd follow. Of course he would. He always had before. We found a quiet corner table after we got our coffee. Up close I could see the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't just a casual visit home. Something was wrong. Spill it, Alex. What are you running from? He stiffened. What makes you think, please? I leaned forward. I knew you better than anyone. Something's wrong. For a long moment he was quiet, turning his coffee cup between his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, urgent. I made some mistakes after I left. Got mixed up with the wrong people, and now... He broke off, that haunted look returning to his eyes. And now? Now I'm trying to make things right. His hand inched across the table until his fingers brushed mine. Starting here, with you. The touch sent electricity up my arm, and I jerked back. It's not that simple. I know. He withdrew his hand, but his eyes held mine. But I'm not asking for simple, Tyler. I'm asking for a chance. The smart thing would be to walk away. But then when it came to Alex Garcia, I'd never been particularly smart. I'm not giving you any chance, I said finally. Not until you tell me everything. His shoulders relaxed slightly, relief crossing his face. Everything, he agreed. No more secrets. I nodded, trying to ignore the way my heart raced when he smiled. Because despite everything, despite 10 years of anger and hurt, one look from him still felt like coming home. And that terrified me more than anything else. The streetlights cast long shadows as we walked. Alex matched my pace, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched, sending electricity crackling through the space between us. Remember this spot? He nodded toward the old oak tree ahead, its branches stretching over a weathered bench. My heart stuttered. Of course I remembered. Flashback. 10 years ago, we'd been sprawled on that same bench, shoulders touching as we shared earbuds. I was supposed to be studying for finals, but Alex kept distracting me, humming along to the music, his fingers absently playing with mine. "You're going to make me fail chemistry," I complained, but I couldn't hide my smile. He turned to face me, his eyes dancing. "Maybe I should give you something else to study." Before I could respond, his lips were on mine. Soft, questioning, perfect. My first kiss. Our first kiss. My textbook slid forgotten to the ground as I pulled him closer, his hands cupping my face like I was something precious. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that since freshman year." "What took you so long?" I whispered. He smiled, thumb tracing my bottom lip. It was worth the wait. Flashback ends. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I forced myself back to the present, where Alex was watching me with an intensity that made my skin burn. "You still get that little crease between your eyes when you're thinking too hard," he said softly. "Don't." I stepped away, needing distance. "Don't act like you still know me." "But I do." He moved closer, backing me against the tree. "I know you bite your lip when you're nervous like you're doing right now. I know your hands shake when you're angry. They're shaking right now, Ty." "Stop!" But my voice had lost its edge, betraying me. "I know the spot right behind your ear that makes you—" "I said stop!" I shoved him back, but he caught my wrists, and suddenly we were pressed together, his warmth seeping into me. The familiar scent of him, leather and spice and something uniquely Alex, made my head spin. "Tell me you don't feel this," he breathed, his lips inches from mine. "Tell me you don't lie awake remembering us, and I'll walk away right now." I should have pushed him away. Should have told him that 10 years was too long, that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. Instead, I fisted my hands in his shirt, and a small moan left my mouth as his lips found mine. The kiss was nothing like our sweet first one a decade ago. This was desperate, hungry. Years of anger and longing and unspoken words poured into a single moment. "Tyler," he groaned, his hands tangled in my hair as he backed me against the tree, a groan rumbling in his chest when I nipped at his bottom lip. I could taste coffee and want and the ghost of everything we used to be. He broke away to trail hot kisses down my neck, finding that spot behind my ear that made me gasp. "God, Tyler," he breathed against my skin. "I've missed you so much." The words were like ice water. I shoved him back, harder this time, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "No, you don't get to say that. You don't get to kiss me like that and tell me you missed me when you're the one who left." "Tyler, this was a mistake." I straightened my shirt with trembling hands. "You can't just walk back into my life and expect everything to be the same. I'm not that lovesick teenager anymore, Alex, and you're not the guy I wanted to trust with my heart. Please." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Just let me explain. I don't want your explanations," my voice cracked. "I don't want anything from you. Stay away from me, Alex. I mean it." I turned and walked away, ignoring his calls, pretending I couldn't feel his eyes burning into my back. Pretending my lips didn't still tingle from his kiss. Pretending my heart wasn't shattering all over again. Because the worst part wasn't that he'd left 10 years ago. The worst part was how easily he could still break me, and how I desperately wanted to let him. 3 days later. "You're brooding again," he announced, perching on the edge of my desk. The last bell had rung 15 minutes ago, leaving my classroom quiet except for the distant sound of the janitor's cart squeaking down the hall. "I don't brood." I kept grading papers, trying to ignore her knowing look. "Oh, please," she plucked the red pen from my hand. "You've been brooding since Alex Garcia walked back into town, and don't think I haven't noticed you checking your phone every 5 minutes. I snatched the pen back. "I'm checking the time." "Really?" She raised a blonde eyebrow. "So you're not avoiding the 12 missed calls and," she glanced at my phone screen, 27 texts from him? "Stop snooping." "Stop lying." She softened her voice. "Ice cream and wine at my place? We can cry about our miserable love lives together." "I'm not crying over Alex Garcia." "Tyler." She laid her hand over mine. "He's in trouble. Real trouble from what you've told me. And you're sitting here marking spelling tests like your first love isn't out there possibly about to get himself killed." My chest tightened. That's not fair. Neither is letting him face this alone because you're too scared to admit you still love him. If something happens to him, she cut me off, if he dies without you ever giving him a chance to explain, could you live with that? The red pen snapped in my hand, ink staining my fingers. Damn it, B. I'm right and you know it, she squeezed my hand. You've spent 10 years being angry. Maybe it's time to spend 5 minutes being honest with yourself. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Alex. Please, Tyler, one last time. Let me explain everything. After that, if you still want me gone, I'll disappear. I promise. He's been sending messages like this for days, I admitted, voice rough. And I'm terrified. The words came out in a rush. What if his explanation isn't good enough? What if it is? What if... I swallowed hard. What if I can't save him? What if you can? She stood, gathering her things. Call him, Ty, before it's too late. After she left, I stared at my phone for a long moment before typing. Where? His response was immediate. The old boathouse, 30 minutes. 30 minutes later. The sun was setting when I reached the abandoned boathouse, painting the lakes in shades of gold and crimson. Alex was already there, silhouetted against the fading light. He turned at my approach, and the look on his face made my heart stutter. You came! The relief in his voice was palpable. Talk fast. I kept my distance, though every cell in my body screamed to move closer. What exactly has happened to you? Eric. Eric happened to me. And who is this Eric? I tried not to let the crazy sudden jealousy show in my voice. Was Eric his lover? Was that why he left me? Alex ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders tight with tension. He runs a trafficking ring. Drugs, weapons, whatever makes money. I was young, stupid, needed cash for college, started making deliveries for him, not knowing what was in the packages. Oh, definitely not his lover. After I started making deliveries, Alex continued, his voice tight, I discovered it wasn't just drugs. They were trafficking people. Kids, Tyler. Young girls who looked so scared. His hands clenched into fists. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. I watched him pace, seeing for the first time the weight he'd carried all these years. So I gathered evidence, recordings, documents, everything I could get my hands on. He laughed bitterly. Spent months playing the loyal soldier while working with the FBI. When they finally moved, they took down Eric's entire operation. 37 kids were rescued. Eric got 15 years. But something went wrong, I said softly, beginning to understand. He nodded, stopping to face me. Someone leaked my identity. Suddenly, every criminal with ties to Eric's network knew I was the whistleblower. The FBI offered witness protection, but... He swallowed hard. Eric still had reach. 2 marshals died trying to protect me. I couldn't let anyone else get hurt because of me. So you ran. For 10 years. His eyes met mine, filled with a pain that made my chest ache. Changed names, cities, never stayed anywhere long. But I kept tabs on you through mutual friends. Heard you became a teacher. A small smile touched his lips. You always wanted to make a difference. Why come back now? I stepped closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. Eric's out. His voice dropped to a whisper. Early release for good behavior. First thing he did was start asking about me. About you. He ran a shaking hand through his hair. I had to warn you. Had to see you one last time before... Before what? Before he finds me. Alex's smile was resigned. We both know how this ends, Tyler. I just needed you to know the truth. Needed you to understand why I left. Those kids. I couldn't live with myself if I'd stayed quiet. But leaving you? His voice broke. That nearly destroyed me. Alex. I reached for him, unable to stop myself. You were everything good in my life. His fingers brushed my cheek. Still are. That's why I can't let him hurt you. If he comes for me, I grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. Then we face him together. You don't get to play hero and sacrifice yourself. Not again. Tyler, no. I cut him off. You spent 10 years protecting everyone else. Let someone protect you for once. The look in his eyes, hope warring with fear, love with resignation, broke something open inside me. I kissed him hard, pouring everything I couldn't say into it. His arms wrapped around me instantly, crushing me against him like he was drowning and I was air. "I can't lose you again," he breathed against my lips. "Then stay." I pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. "Stay and fight. With me." A twig snapped in the darkness. Alex went rigid, pushing me behind him as he scanned the shadows. "We need to go. Now. What Eric's men?" His voice was tight with fear. "They followed me." "Tyler, I'm so sorry. I never meant to drag you into this." "Too late." I gripped his hand. "We're in this together." His fingers tightened around mine as footsteps approached through the gathering dark. "Together," he echoed. And despite everything, despite the danger closing in, my heart soared at that single word. Because this time, I wasn't letting him face his demons alone. The footsteps drew closer through the darkness. Alex pushed me behind him, but I grabbed his arm, refusing to let him shield me. Two shadows emerged from the trees, bulky figures in dark jackets. "Boss wants a word," the taller one said, his hand resting meaningfully on his hip. Alex's body was coiled tight as a spring. "Tell Eric if he wants to talk, he can come himself." The second man smirked. "Oh, he will. Midnight. The old warehouse on River Street." He tossed the phone at Alex's feet. "Don't be late. And come alone, or your teacher friend here might have an accident at work tomorrow." My hand tightened on Alex's arm as the men melted back into the shadows. The moment they were gone, he spun to face me, eyes wild with fear. "You need to leave town," he said urgently. "Tonight I'll handle Eric." I silenced him with a kiss, hard and fierce. When I pulled back, his pupils were blown wide, breath coming fast. "I'm not going anywhere," I said against his lips. "We do this together." "Tyler." His hands framed my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. "If anything happened to you, it won't." I pressed closer, feeling his heart hammering against mine. "You've protected everyone else for 10 years. Let me protect you now." He rested his forehead against mine, a shudder running through him. "I love you," he whispered. "God help me I never stopped." "Then trust me." I pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. "I have a plan." Midnight. The warehouse loomed before us at midnight, a hulking shadow against the star-strewn sky. Alex's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezing once before letting go. "Remember," I whispered, "whatever happens in there, I know." His eyes locked with mine, intense enough to steal my breath. "Be careful. You too." He kissed me once more, quick and desperate, before disappearing into the shadows. I counted to 30, then moved to my position. Inside the warehouse was a maze of shipping containers and old machinery. Eric stood in a cleared space in the center, flanked by 4 men. I recognized him from the case files I saw with Alex. Older now, grayer, but with the same cold eyes. "Alex," his voice echoed in the vast space. "My prodigal son returns." Alex stepped into the light, hands raised. "It's over, Eric. Let it go." "Over?" Eric's laugh was ugly. "You destroyed everything I built, made me a joke in prison, and now you're back here, playing house with your little boyfriend?" His smile turned cruel. "How is Tyler, by the way? Still grading papers in that classroom with the big windows?" Alex's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "This is between us. Leave him out of it." "But he's already in it," Eric nodded to his men. "Bring him." 2 figures emerged from the shadows behind Alex, dragging a struggling form between them. Me. Or so they thought. The warehouse erupted in chaos as SWAT teams burst through every entrance, voices shouting, "FBI, freeze!" Eric's face contorted with rage. He lunged for Alex, a knife flashing in his hand. I broke from my hiding spot, tackling him from behind. We crashed to the ground, the knife skittering away. Eric's elbow caught my jaw, sending stars exploding across my vision. "Tyler!" Alex's shout was desperate. I rolled, narrowly avoiding Eric's fist. He was stronger, but I was faster. We grappled on the concrete, each fighting for control. His hands found my throat. Then Alex was there, ripping Eric away, landing a punch that sent him sprawling. FBI agents swarmed in, securing Eric as he spat curses and threats. "You okay?" Alex pulled me up, hands running over me, frantically checking for injuries. God, Tyler, when he grabbed for that knife, I cut him off with a kiss, not caring who saw. His arms wrapped around me instantly, pulling me close as the chaos continued around us. When we finally broke apart, his eyes were dark with a mixture of relief, love, and lingering fear. "Nice plan," he murmured against my lips. "Using the FBI contact from the missing persons case?" I smiled. "Told you to trust me." "Tyler." He pressed his forehead to mine. "I've spent 10 years running, trying to protect you by staying away. But watching you take down Eric," he laughed softly. "And maybe I'm not the only one doing the protecting anymore." "Partners?" I offered, throwing my fingers through his. His answering smile was brilliant. "Partners." As the FBI led Eric away in handcuffs, Alex pulled me closer, his lips brushing my ear. "Take me home?" The heat in his voice made me shiver, because this time, when we left together, neither of us were running away. We were running towards something instead. Something that felt a lot like forever. 3 months later. "You're doing it wrong," I called from the doorway, watching Alex struggle with a box of books in our new living room. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the bay windows, catching the silver chain he still wore, the one I'd given him last month just because. "I'm doing it perfectly," he insisted, though the precarious tower of books suggested otherwise. "And you could help instead of critiquing my technique." "I could," I crossed the room, deliberately slow, "but the view's pretty good from here." He turned, catching my hips and pulling me close before I could dodge. Tease. "You love it." I ran my fingers through his hair, slightly longer now than when he'd first returned. He looked younger these days. The haunted shadows gone from his eyes, replaced by a light I was still getting used to seeing. 3 months, he murmured, nuzzling my neck. "Still feels like a dream sometimes." I knew what he meant. Some mornings I still woke up startled to find him there, half convinced the past 3 months had been a fantasy. But then he'd pull me closer, press sleepy kisses to my shoulder, and reality would feel better than any dream. The transition hadn't been seamless. Alex still had nightmares sometimes, still checked the locks twice before bed. I still had moments of irrational fear that he'd disappear again. But we talked about it now, faced our fears together instead of running from them. "You're thinking too hard again," he said, pulling back to study my face. "That little crease is back." Just thinking about how different things are now. I traced the scar on his knuckles, a souvenir from that night at the warehouse. No more running. No more looking over our shoulders. No more wasting time. His hand slid under my shirt, warm against my skin. "Though, speaking of time, don't you have papers to grade?" "They can wait." I pressed closer, enjoying the way his breath hitched. "Unless you want me to stop." His answer was to lift me onto the nearest box, scattering books across the floor as he kissed me. 3 months, and still every kiss felt like coming home. Like finding something I hadn't known I was missing until it was back in my arms. "We should probably unpack." I managed between kisses, even as my legs wrapped around his waist. "Probably," he agreed, making no move to stop. "Or we could christen our new living room." I laughed against his mouth. "We haven't even built the couch yet." "Floor works." His hands tightened on my hips. "Unless you're getting old and precious about comfort." "Watch it." I nipped his bottom lip. "I can still kick your ass." "Prove it." His eyes darkened with familiar heat. "Gladly." I pushed him back, enjoying his grunt of surprise as I tackled him to the floor. We landed among scattered books and packing paper, laughing like teenagers. He looked up at me, hair mussed, eyes bright with joy. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. "We already are, genius, hence the boxes." "No," he sat up, keeping me in his lap. "I mean, really move in with me. Not just sharing space because it's safer, not just because it makes sense." His hands framed my face. "Move in with me because I love you. Because I want to wake up to you every morning for the rest of my life." My heart did a slow flip in my chest. "Alex." "I know it's fast," he continued quickly. "And I know we're still figuring things out. But Tyler?" His thumb brushed my bottom lip. "These past 3 months have been everything I dreamed about for 10 years. Everything I thought I'd lost the right to have." I kissed him softly, feeling him smile against my lips. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes? Yes, I'll move in with you, for real." I pressed closer, enjoying the way his hands tightened on my waist. Though technically I already signed the lease, so he cut me off with a kiss that made my toes curl, deep and slow and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he murmured, "even when you're being a smartass." "Especially then," I smiled, running my fingers through his hair. "And I love you, even when you're awful at unpacking." He laughed, the sound free and light in a way I was still getting used to hearing. Outside, the sun was setting, painting our new home in shades of gold. Books lay scattered around us, waiting to be shelved. Boxes waited to be unpacked. Life waited to be lived. But for now, in this moment, with Alex's arms around me and his heart beating steady against mine, nothing else mattered. We had time. We had trust. We had love. And this time, we weren't letting go. Conclusion. Years have passed and here we are, standing together, ready to make promises that will last forever. I never could have imagined this when Alex first disappeared. So much has happened. Pain, anger, and then healing. But now, everything feels right. We've both changed, but somehow we're stronger for it. I look at him and think of the boy who walked away, and the man who came back, broken yet determined. Today, there's no more fear or regret, just love and trust. We've made it through the storm, and now, with his hand in mine, I know we're ready for whatever the future holds. Together, always. Do you believe in second chances? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.